I don't know if this is an unpopular opinion or not, but I think Cars is actually one of the weaker Pixar films. Probably a strange thing to hear, but even back when I was a kid, I could hardly seem to get that much into it. I didn't watch the film as often as my older brothers did because I didn't really want to. I don't know, something about the idea of a film about sentient cars just hasn't been clicking with me much. I like the toy lines though. And no, the movie came out first, not the toy lines. I hadn't even seen it for years since, so eventually, very recently, I watched the film, and now that I'm more of a film snob, I actually have more reasons to not care for it much. But at the same time, there is some appreciation to be had for the film. Hear me out, okay? Just hear me out. The plot centers on a rookie race car named Lightning McQueen, who is tied for the final round for the Piston Cup with two other racers, Strip Weathers, also known as the King, and Chick Hicks. On the way to California for the official finals, McQueen falls out the back of his trailer and winds up in Radiator Springs. At first, he's in a rush to get to California for the Piston Cup, but he can't leave because upon his arrival in Radiator Springs, he accidentally wrecks the main road and is being forced to fix it up. Eventually, he starts to warm up to the town and make friends with some of the residents before he eventually has to get into the race for the Piston Cup. Yeah, pretty basic, and fairly predictable too. We've already seen films before about the protagonist being in the spotlight and soon learning to take it slow and not be so concerned about winning that it overshadows more important morals. In fact, it bears a very strong resemblance to Rocky, except instead of boxing, it's car racing. I'm sure the reveal about the racing past of Doc Hudson, played by Paul Newman in his final acting role before his death in 2008, was supposed to be a big surprise, but when McQueen's trying to drift on dirt in one scene and Doc Hudson is giving him tips on how to do it right, we can tell that there's some sort of racing backstory with this character, and a tragic event is a big contributor to why he's not like that anymore, even before the reveal. That's not the only problem. How did Pixar make this shift from good-looking human characters in The Incredibles to a whole movie about sentient cars? Again, I wasn't a big fan of the idea of sentient cars even as a kid. You just hear the name and it doesn't sound like a Pixar film, but more like a parody of a Pixar film. Except this film is no Airplane or Spaceballs or even Monty Python. I guess there seemed to be a bit of potential for car jokes in the movie, but instead, the humor can't really get that much out of me. Probably one of the strangest I heard is, he won 3 Piston Cups. He did what in this cup? Yeah, it's one of those kids' movies. Even with its issues, the film does look good visually. There's vibrant colors, we get nice shots when they're racing. One of the best scenes is this drive-by scene where McQueen is taking it easy by going on a calming drive with Sally. I think this is actually one of the film's best strengths, the visuals and the animation. While I'm not a huge fan of some of these characters, the way they express themselves can actually get across to you how they're feeling without having to listen to it. You wouldn't think it would be possible since they're cars, but Pixar kind of cheats on this and allows them to stress out their wheels a little for bigger expression than just their faces. I like the effort that actually goes into the characters expressing themselves. As for the characters themselves, Lightning McQueen starts off as a bit of an arrogant jerk. He's not exactly a likable protagonist. Also, I'm not really a big fan of this tow truck named Mater. He's got a voice like an old farmer who doesn't quite grasp the advanced technology and stuff that surrounds him, a bit more old-fashioned. He's mainly there for comedic relief, but thankfully it doesn't seem to be overplayed. But of course they're going to screw that up sometime in the future. Seeing how this is a Pixar film and it should have its emotional moments, you'd think that I wouldn't care all that much with all that I've said about the movie. But actually, when McQueen learns of how Radiator Springs used to be before Interstate 40 was built, it made me wish that the town was much more populated than it is. It really is unfortunate for the people, automobiles, who live and work there. At the same time, however, I find it unbelievable that automobiles were ever able to create the structures that encompass the world in which they live in. They're not people, they're vehicles. How did they get these structures built? Whatever, the film was a success with moviegoers and a box office hit. It made way for 2 crappy sequels and a crappy spin-off, which also got its own crappy sequel. Oddly enough, the spin-off was not a Pixar film and exclusively made by Disney, however that works, but I digress. Bottom line, it exists. The concept is not that great and the characters are a bit of a mixed bag, but it has good visuals and animation. If you like this film, more power to you, but for me, it's one of the weaker Pixar films. Not something I'm proud of Pixar for. Remember when I said that I like the toy lines? Watching the movie makes it seem as though it was a movie based on a toy line, not the other way around. So I guess a few other good things came out of Pixar releasing this movie, but the film itself is not that special, at least not for me.